Hello and welcome back to another Space Kangaroo tutorial. Today we're going to be programming in Lua a little bit more, and we're going to get started doing an actual project because I found that learning new concepts is a lot easier when you can actually apply them instead of just learning the concept in an abstract way. So we're just going to start writing a text-based adventure where we can actually apply these things that we're learning. We've already covered a fair amount of stuff that we can actually use in a text-based adventure. So we can get print out output and we can get input. So now let's start actually writing something useful with that. So let's just jump right in. So for now we're just gonna print welcome to the game, and we're gonna print what do you want to do. And then we'll get their input and stick it in a variable called input. If you remember from last time, this is what we did. And then we'll print the input for now just so we can make sure that that's working. So we'll run that. Welcome to the game. What do you want to do? You can type whatever and it will repeat what we typed. Alright, cool. So now we're going to get started with our first structure, our new programming concept, called an if statement. And what we're going to do with this if statement is we're going to check the value of what the user types in, and if it is some value, like say inspect, so we can inspect the room, we will print out a message of that room, of a detailed message of that room. Right. So all we have to do to do an if statement is we type if, and we say input equals inspect, then, and then we're going to type end even. Okay, so an if statement is always in this format. It's if, it goes if, and then we have a condition that has to be met, and if that condition is true, then we'll run whatever code's inside between the then and the end. So inside the then and the end, we're going to just print you are in a cave. How about? I don't know. I'm really bad at writing descriptions of stuff. Alright, so it'll print you're in a cave. So that's only if our input is equal to inspect. And this equal here, we've always used a single equal sign before, and that's because that's assignment. We're saying grab whatever value we put to the right and stick it in the variable on the left. So we can say a number, and that will put the value 2 that we can now represent with the variable num. And we can manipulate these variables so that they'll represent different things. But equals checks that two values are equivalent. It's an equivalency test instead of assignment. So when we say input equals inspect, this will return true. This means this statement is true if and only if the keyword input is inspect. Alright, so we're going to just run this now. What do you want to do? If we type inspect, we'll get our output, and if we run this without typing that, we don't get anything. Alright, awesome. So now, let's put another if statement, and we'll say if the input is leave cave, then we'll print you leave the cave, and then if the user types inspect again, then we'll print you are at the base of a hill. Alright. And right now if you run this, we'll get you are in a cave, and then we'll get you're at the base of a hill. But we need to actually get the input in between those times, so we actually can check freshly what the user types in. If we don't do that, I'll just show you what that is right now. What you want to do, inspect, and then we inspect in the cave, and we also inspect when we leave the cave. So instead what we're going to do is we're just going to grab the input every time an if statement completes. So we're just going to do this again and again. Alright. So now we can say inspect and then we're in a cave, and then we can leave the cave, and now we leave the cave, we get that message there, what you want to do, and then when we inspect again, we're at the base of a hill. Alright, but this is kind of brittle. If we run this and we type ASDF, and then we type inspect, we're still at the base of the hill. So we want to stay in the cave as long as we don't leave it. Right? We don't want the program to continue on past this point unless we actually leave the cave. So what I'm going to do here is just put a comment here. And we're going to say once we leave the cave. And comments get ignored by the interpreter, so don't worry about, you can type whatever you want in a comment, and in Lua that's denoted by just typing --. Alright, so instead what we're going to do is we're going to say as long as some condition isn't met, continue doing the same thing. So in this case, I'm gonna delete that now, and we're gonna do a loop, and that loop is called a while loop. So while the structure for a while loop is while some condition is not met, we're going to loop. All right. So while some condition is met, while some condition is met, we'll continue looping. So we're going to use some logic here, and we're going to say while input does not equal leave cave. Right, and then we're going to just type end, and at the end of a while line, you just type do. All right, so the structure for many things in Lua, for loops, all loops start with the loop type, some condition in the middle, and then do, and then you in your block here, you handle what would happen in each loop tick, and then you end that loop and it'll start over as long as this condition is still true. So if input does not equal leave cave, this evaluates to true. Because if we type, say, inspect, does inspect equal leave cave? No, it doesn't. And since we're saying it does not equal, we're inverting that statement and saying, which evaluates to true then. So as long as we don't leave the cave, we'll continue looping it through here, and then we'll handle what the user types in these input sections here. So let's test this now. What do you want to do? Inspect. You're in a cave. We can type inspect again, and it still says we're in the cave. We haven't moved on yet. And I'm just typing gibberish. We can inspect once more, and we're still in the cave. So unless we type a leave cave, we'll stay in that cave. And now we leave the cave, and it says we left the cave. Alright, so not that it's actually causing any problems at the moment, but we're just going to explicitly let Lua know that input exists before we start checking it, because that's kind of bad form if you don't. You just want it to know from the start that input is going to be checked here. So we're going to just say input equals an empty string, and that just lets us know that we're going to be using this later on, and then we can actually check an empty string against something instead of checking a null, which I'll explain later. Nulls are another data type. All right, so let's do another room here, and I'm just gonna delete that and copy this code because we can use it again. So while input does not equal, let's see, we'll be at the base of a hill, right? So we'll say there's a path. So if we follow the path, we'll leave this area. So you are at the base of a hill. If we type inspect, that's what we'll get. And if we say follow path, we have to let the user know that there's a path. So if we follow the path, we'll say you follow the path. Alright. Fairly simple. It's essentially the same thing as before. When we type this now, we now have two loops that we have to go through. So what do we want to do? We can inspect. We're in a cave. We can leave the cave. And now when we inspect, we're at the base of a hill. And there's a path. So we can inspect again if we want to, or we can follow the path, in which case we exit the game. Okay, so we've got some pretty cool abilities now. We can add more if statements if we want to have the user to give the user more commands that they can use. But for now, I'm gonna introduce you to one more thing before I leave you today, and that's going to be let me just copy this. We're gonna have a room that requires an additional statement to be met, an additional condition to be met before we can exit it. So we're gonna have a gate at the base, at the end of the path. And the gate will be locked, and there will be a key hidden in the grass, but the user has to inspect and then grab the key before they can actually leave through the gate. So I'm going to show you, we're going to have a variable outside that's called haveKey, and we can say it equals false. So you'll notice my editor highlighted that, and that means that this is a keyword in the language. So this is a new data type. It's called a boolean, and a boolean can have two values. It can have one of two values, true or false. So if it's true, that means we can just throw it in like an if statement or a while loop and say, is this variable true? And if it's true, it'll evaluate to true, and then we'll do whatever code is in there. And it works with while loops and everything too. So haveKey is going to equal false, because when we get there, it's not going. We don't have it yet. So we'll have to set that to false. So as long as the input does not equal open the gate, and we and haveKey equals false. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this entire statement and invert it. So we're going to say, I'm just going to put some parentheses, so it evaluates whatever is in the parentheses first. If you remember, like in arithmetic, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, parentheses are the first thing that are evaluated, and that's true to programming too. So whatever we put in here will be evaluated first, because when we create complex conditions, they're evaluated with different weights on different operators, similar to how they are in math. In this while loop here, we're going to say while haveKey equals true, and input equals open gate. So this means if we have the key, if we have the key and the input equals open gate, then loop, which we want the exact opposite of. So when we'll say while not haveKey equals true and input equals open gate. Alright, so this is kind of complex here, and I'll explain what each section does. This AND statement means if this condition is true and this condition is true, then the everything in these parentheses is true. You don't have to always put parentheses if it's an AND, but in this case we want this to evaluate before the not is evaluated. Because if we didn't put these here, it would say not haveKey equals true, which we don't want. We want this entire statement. So if we have the key and the input is open gate, so that's what this AND block does, we'll evaluate this to true. But we want the exact opposite of that. So while not inverts whatever statement we have next. So we could say not haveKey, and that means if we don't have the key, that's a true statement, right? So this is a little bit confusing, but it starts making sense when you start throwing together more complex conditions in your code. So just practice it. You don't have to do stuff that complex. This is a little bit confusing from a beginner standpoint, but you could probably simplify this a little bit more. We could say while not haveKey and not input gate. No, that wouldn't work. It has to be this entire thing here. So we have to first inspect. We're going to say there's a gate. There is a gate. A key is hidden in the grass. Okay? And if input equals grab key, then print you grabbed the key. But we have to set our have key variable to true if we when we do this, because then we do actually have the key, and then when we check it against all the other statements, it'll evaluate to true. So have key equals true, not equals equals. Equals would evaluate that condition and say whether it's true or false. Alright, so we're going to set have key to true, and we're going to print you grab the key. Alright, so the last command we'll have in this room or area is open gate. Alright, so if we have the key, so if have key, and you'll notice I'm now nesting an if statement. You could have an if statement in an if statement. So if we have key and that's true, then we'll print you've escaped. End. If we don't have the key, so if it equals false, then print you have to, we'll say the gate is locked. The gate is locked. Okay. And now when we run this code, what should happen is when we'll be able to make it to this point, and then when we get here, we'll have to get the key before we can actually exit, because this loop will go on forever. And just so we know we've reached the end, we'll print you win. Alright, so we run this code now. What do you want to do? So the first thing we have to do is leave the cave. We can inspect here. I forget where we are now. We're at the base of the hill, so we follow the path. And now if we try to open the gate is locked, and it continues looping. So if we inspect, a key is hidden in the grass. Grab key. Now we have the key, and now when we try to open the gate, we win. All right. Alright, so that works. It works how we expected it to, and we're gonna do one more thing before I end this tutorial here. So that is, we're going to update this message here, the inspect message, if we have the key. So right now when we run it, we can leave the cave, follow the path. If we inspect, the key is hidden in the grass, we can grab the key. We grab the key now, but when we inspect again, the key, our message still says the key is hidden in the grass, but we already have it, so there's no reason to say that. Okay, what I did there was Control C. That's actually going to be very useful if you accidentally hit an infinite loop, which I will show you in a minute. Alright, so grab the key. If we have the key, we're going to say in our inspect command, if have key equals true, equals false first, then we want to print out that message. But if we have the key, if have key equals true, then we'll print there is a gate, because we don't need that message, that bit of the end of message now to print out. Alright, so we'll run this again. What do you want to do? We're gonna say leave cave, follow path, and then when we reach this gate, we can inspect. A key is hidden in the grass. Grab the key, and then once we inspect, it only prints out there is a gate now. And now when we open the gate, we've escaped. We win. All right. So I'm just gonna show you one more tip. In case you accidentally goof this up, and I've done this a million times. It's called an infinite loop, and what we've done here is, you see I just commented out these two lines of code, and that'll make the compiler ignore them, the interpreter ignore them now, so Lua will not see these lines when it comes to run our program. So what that means is input equals nothing, and we never set it to anything else. We never get the user input. So it's just going to continuously check. It's going to continue looping in this while loop, and it's going to continuously check it against all of these, but we're never going to escape. So we'll follow the path. This is in the gate area, by the way. So we leave cave, follow path, and now when we inspect, we can't do anything. It's broken. We've broken the game because it's just infinitely looping now. So what you do in that case is you just hit Control C, and this is like a global stop for any program in the command line. So if you hit Control C with most programs, they'll just immediately exit. It forces them to close. It's called a kill signal. So if you accidentally just get an infinite loop like that, or it's just printing this message out a million times, so leave cave, follow path, it's infinite, just hit Control C and that'll get you out of there, so you don't have to like close your console window every time or something. So that's just something that you'll run into, and Control C will get you out. And even if your program is running fine, you can hit Control C if you just want to get out of it quickly. So right here I can say inspect, and oh wait, I want to exit right now but I can't, so I just hit Control C, and you might have to hit it twice because it'll grab the input and then you have to hit it again, but once you do it, just mash Control C and you'll get out. Okay, so that's everything I basically wanted to cover in this one. Let me know in the comments if any of this confused you, because I threw a lot at you this time, and there was we covered a lot. So if there is anything that confused you, let me know. I'll be happy to explain it in the comments or in the next video. This code will all be up online. I'll have a link in the description. In fact, I put up the repository with all the code in it already. So I should have it right when this video releases. So anyway, you can use that as a reference. I still would recommend typing this code out manually. You will learn it way better. It will get ingrained in your mind. Let me know what you think of this tutorial series. And next time we'll be getting on with some more. We'll be expanding on this a little bit more and making it better. And we'll get rid of some of the redundant code and make this code a little bit cleaner. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Like, favorite, subscribe to my channel if you like programming tutorials or 3D art tutorials, and we will see you all later. Thank you very much for watching.